it all went through him. He said, "Where'd it go?" He just shrugged his shoulders, and the executive director's all, what? And I said, "Dude," and I just interrupted him, said, "Dude, where's the trace of custody on that?" And he said, "Well, I guess there is none." I said, "What do you mean you guess, man? You're a professor at a freaking university. What do
Yeah.
you guess there is no trace of custody? Everything gets trace custody, you know?"
So online with me, I got Robert Kryders, who's going to be one of our featured speakers here on the Moon Lake Gathering, July 28th and 29th, 2023. But Robert Kryder, man, you probably don't know this, Robert, but I've been watching you and seeing your videos and stuff's posted on the internet clear back since the early 90s when you was treasure hunting. I remember seeing videos where you was explaining how to interpret some symbols. I don't know if you remember that from way back then. But
I would imagine so. I mean, I know I had an MSN site when MSN started.
Yeah.
And actually, we were AOL when AOL was starting. So yeah, and I think I remember you from all the way back in the beginning of the AOL stuff. So
yep, I started a web page called the Treasure Hunter's Hideout, and that's where I didn't have a computer. I had a thing called Web TV, and I was building it all on my TV, and it was a long time ago. But anyway, Robert here, from what I see of you, you're a brilliant guy. You're always inventing all kinds of stuff, but you're a big time Bigfoot guy, and that's kind of what you're going to come and talk to us about. You're world renowned for not only just researching them, but you're out there chasing them and inventing stuffs to help you find them. But I've always wanted to interview you about the treasure hunter stuffs, you know, and we're going to get to that another day. But right now, you know, I just appreciate you coming and talk to us at the Moon Lake Gathering, and anybody wants to nab him, you know, after he's talking, you know, during the days, not only talk to him about Bigfoot, but man, this is a treasure hunting guy here you can talk to about decoding symbols, Spanish, and all kinds of stuff. So Robert, with all that said, you know, tell us a little bit about you and what you're going to be talking about, and give us a little idea who Robert Kryders is for those that don't know.
Well, since the mid 90s, I guess I've been pretty heavy into the treasure hunting thing. I know you've been following me since way back then. And that's how I got into the whole Bigfoot trip, actually, because we were going into the craziest, most remote. But we were going everywhere that, like, the old timers, the old miners and stuff would tell us, you know, if you guys go up there, you're going to die. Don't go up there. You go up there, you'll die. And that was in central Arizona. And so we got my running shoes up there around in the Bradshaws and searching and finding Coronado's winter home back in 98. And or actually, I'm sorry, back in 88. And so by the time the internet rolled around in 90, we had moved over to New Mexico and began to decode and find things. But I figured out the whole decoding process, finding Coronado's winter home in the 80s. And then, but, you know, being in all these really super remote places and the places that no one will go and all this stuff, well, you run into all the crap that's hiding from everybody. Let's put it that way. So the more rugged and the more remote it is, the more chance you're going to run into odd and off the wall crap. And Bigfoot was one of them. And so it would just became a thing, right? I mean, it was just a thing that was always around. And then we started having some pretty hot and heavy encounters over here in New Mexico on the big site that we were doing. And, you know, I've never really come too public about that place, but we will somewhat in the future. And but anyway, I had a lot of interaction there. And then I, you know, when 2010 rolled around, I had already had a big treasure deal that we recovered the world's largest collection of Spanish colonial mining tools. A lot of them you can only see in like D-Ray Metallica and the drawings in there.
Wow.
And so that we also found smelted gold and broke into gold in the ground, and, you know, dug the entry hole was 90 feet deep with 1,000-foot of entry ramp. And so it was a considerable dig. And when the value got proven, the finance company that I actually set up went AWOL on me and tried to reduce me down, take all my control away and everything else when it got proven into the billions.
Wow.
And it turned into a 3-year battle. And I actually eventually they were getting me out. So eventually, when another bigwig contractor, started getting into what we were into, he said, "Man, I'm not touching this unless you bring the original guy back on. I've never seen anything like this in the world." Big excavator company. And so when they called me, I had OSHA and MSHA go in and they shut that down. Well, it left such a bad flavor in my mouth. They got me for $750,000, and I didn't have a dime when we were done. I had a lot of equipment, and I had some real nice artifacts and real nice stuff, but it left a pretty bad taste. So all those years we were running into Bigfoot and all that stuff that was happening, and it became a pretty normal scene. I thought, and I looked online in like 2010 and all this crap, and I was doing the whole Bigfoot thing and looking at that, and I saw a guy on a quad bike eating an ice cream cone in a Bigfoot suit, and a couple of good things, but then all this crap, and the woo had started and everything. And I thought, you know what, screw it, and we were just having some encounters at the place I was living right then at that time, and real close stuff coming to the house and messing with the barrels of oats, and banging on the house when we cook bacon wrapped pollock or cake or whatever.
Huh.
And so I thought, well, this is a good time to go as any. So I just said, screw the treasure stuff. Had such a bad time on that last one that I thought we'll just take all this equipment and all this know-how and method and team, and we'll just go chase Bigfoot for a little while and end all this hoopla and all this crap. So we did, because we always kind of operated kind of in a military manner in a way. You have to, you're going to get sidetracked, and if you want to do it for real, you're going to have to deal with this agency and that agency and all this stuff inevitably. And so we just kind of applied all that same deal. So I was used to walking through some pretty big doors, and back in '08, I went down and acted as an advocate for a group down there that was finding treasure in outside Silver City, New Mexico, on U.S. Forest Service land, and the USFS had gone in and canceled them, claiming that there was no permit structure for hunting treasure. And so basically you're AWOL. Now you could have a mine, and originally said they were going after a mineral. And when I went up and scanned, so we do a lot of 3D deep earth imaging, and when I went up and scanned it, well, I saw a structure down there. So it wasn't, and then saw some items and this and that, and these two air shafts, but the structure wasn't. We knew that they were going for value treasure, and they were concerned that mining and going for a mineral body, then when they broke into this structure, they wouldn't have any rights over it. And they were kind of right. And so we worked as an advocate with them and pushed the U.S. Forest Service. I mean, if you read their job description, they don't like you to get a hold of the rules and regulations. The Department of Agriculture kind of frowns on you getting them. But in there, it clearly states they can't tell you no pretty much anything out there. It's for resource development. It's for resource acquisition for the American people. And then they're supposed to manage it so we don't wreck it and step on each other's toes. And so, so we reminded them way back when. I think that was in '04, I think, when that started. And then we went up through the years with them. But finally, they had created treasure trove laws. And now you can go get a treasure trove permit. And
so you helped create that treasure trove law thing, or you was part of that?
Yeah, we forced them to, and showing them their paragraph in red. It said in there that you have, if it's an unknown, it has to be treated as a developmental resource, and they have to assist in obtaining it. So in other words, that gives you the easiest route to travel in, not having the roads blocked by the rocks and 5 miles of road gone, so you have to go 12 miles on a quad to try to take timbers to a hole. So all their script in their own writ says they have to remove all that stuff and get you in there the most efficient, safest route, and this and that. Now, if they're got a certain kind of plant or whatever that needs to come back or whatever, they can route you around something like that. But they have to assist you in that. So they had to treat it as a developmental resource, and they had to set those. And I think it took only about 6 months after we went and sat down with the Western Regional Director and set them in an office and put out all the books and said, here's your books, here's your job, this is what it says you're to do here. It says you can't, nowhere does it say you can say no, it doesn't, it's not in there.
So you're exactly right, man. I wish I'd have known you'd gone through that, because I could have talked to you and saved me some heartaches on some stuffs. But they make up their own rules, hoping that you don't look at what the real rules are, and then they only quote part of the rule that says you can't, but there's other clauses that say you can, but they don't quote them, and you got to dig into the laws yourself. I wish I'd have known about that, you Robert. So I gotta
doing at the level
some of my
at the level we started working, I had to be familiar with the Federal Antiquities Act and all the state laws and how state laws can be applied, or the federal antiquities laws can be applied. So they can't really be applied to private land on a dig if you're doing certain things. Like we did all that in Santa Fe County, which is one of the is a hyper regulated county. You can't even, change the screen in your screen door without a permit. So I mean, that's exaggeration, but it's almost true. And we did all that with no permitting, just because, it's what you call it and how you conduct yourself. But if you hire like a third party on private land, let's say you go and rent a backhoe and then you hire a separate operator, it becomes a third party. Well, then you can fall under the Federal Antiquities Act. If you rent a backhoe and run it yourself, you can't. So there's a lot of little
Really?
laws in there, a lot of little writs in there. And then, human remains are not uncommon when you're doing treasure and doing things like that. And so, you don't, it doesn't mean if you find human remains, everyone thinks, oh God, they'll shut the whole thing down. And so many people are nervous and scared to recover their stuff because these various reasons. And really, it's just as long as you have your ass covered. So, you reach out to a federal medical examiner and hire them on the backside on their free time to represent you if you find something. And if you do, you call them, and as long as they come in first, they don't have to call anybody, and then they get it done, and no one's, and then they file it, no one's the wiser. I mean, no big deal. It's like, but if you don't do that stuff in advance, then they can claim you don't know what you're doing. And
Ah,
everything is described as the knowing party. And the reason for that is somebody's got to be held liable. So if it goes south, they want somebody they can blame, and that's going to be the knowing party. And so that has to be established. And then anytime there's no knowing party, they can step in because, a valued historical resource or cultural or to the Reparation Act with the Native Americans, things like that. So it's just, there's steps around all of it. But guys do a lot of this stuff, and they dig a lot. And we did too, and done a lot of work and done a lot of poking. But they, like some of the big old treasure hunters have said, the worst curse is if you find something big. And there was, a few of the guys that wrote some of the more famous, real good symbol books. One of them, I can't remember his name, wrote a book about that. What do you do if you find a cache? And he said, well, that's the biggest curse you'll find is to hit something large. And we got a habit of hitting big stuff, and it's concerning because there's a lot of hands that want to get in the middle of that stuff, and
yep.
there's a lot of, yeah, I'd say everything from bureaus to entities that don't want you touching it either half the time. So
Man, Robert, I knew you was a smart guy, but I didn't you knew this stuff, man. I'm gonna put you on speed dial because you got some great information there. But back to so at the Moon Lake Gathering here, like I said, Robert's gonna be talking about Bigfoot because he's a world renowned. I mean, he travels all over the country. He's doing lectures and talking about some of the equipment he's developed to help find these things and what he's found. So he's going to talk about that. But do you care if these guys hit you up while we're there? If they got any questions about treasure hunting, can they hit you up about that too?
yeah, they can hit me about whatever the hell they want. Either I'll answer or I won't, 99% of it I'm going to answer. So, I don't, that's the whole reason for me. I do any of this, Terry. I think since the beginning, you probably gleaned on that. Is just, I was pissed off since I was a kid that we weren't learning the truth. I mean, we were seeing parts of it, and it was always being left on the shelf as something cool to look at. And it's like, well, how come nobody's looking at it? So as I got older, in my teens especially, it's like, how come we're not learning about this cool shit? The cool shit exists, right? So how come in the world we're not learning about it? Why do these things exist? And just because they fly outside of the norm, so to speak,
Yeah.
and so, but they're there, and they have a lot of them, the oop arts, the out of place artifacts throughout the world, whether it be a giant stone block or anything else. If they I always knew as a little kid, if a piece of a puzzle doesn't fit, or you have to cram it in, well, you're obviously not doing the puzzle right, you know and so and that's kind of what they seem to be doing the whole time. So as we learn things, I want to share those things. And on the treasure hunting thing, I never believed in really keeping everything to oneself, so or even trying to dig everything up. So I reached out to a lot of people and offered to help in any way I could on a lot of stuff, and for nothing in return, and usually just to log and get the information and see the sites. And after doing that, after being on dozens, and well, probably a couple hundred over the 30-40 years, because I started that when I was 18.
Yeah.
Now I'm 58 now, so it's 40 years of this. And doing that, though, I got to work on just hundreds of different little locations and get to see how everything works at each one of them. And then compiling that with research and figuring out some keys. Now it's got to where I read a lot of this stuff at a jog, and not a lot. I don't think a lot of people can do it because they react that way to me. Like I go out with people and stuff and I watch them, and they're doing what's normal to do. They're paying attention to every little thing, and there might be three things there you need to actually pay attention to, and the rest could just lead you, oh God, a lifetime of trying to figure them all out, you know. And instead of concentrating on all that detail and all every little twist and turn, you know, you learn the ones that matter. And then so we have modern technology, so you don't have to necessarily know, you know, you can know within 50 feet, let's put it that way. You know, you don't have to know within the square inch or square foot and exactly how deep a shaft it is, exactly how much of it's backfilled, and exactly everything else. We can discover a lot of that as we go, but a lot of that information everybody's poking at, you know, those things, you know. So,
Yeah.
and then there's some other stuff too. There's a lot of the monuments people are finding weren't even made by humans. So there's that. I mean, and that's something I want to share with too, because what we do with them works. This last one, I don't know if whoever's seen it, but if you go to our YouTube channel at KX Kreider Exploration on YouTube, there's one called 77 Mule Loads to Glory. And that took 2 days to bust that. And I haven't cracked it yet. Found the cache. I haven't cracked it. But anyone who's done this for a long time, just watch that video and you'll know exactly what I know on that. But it broke it in a couple of days, and it's a pretty complex map. And but once you actually know what to pay, like I said, pay attention to what not to. So there's so much conjecture out there because most people only get on their own site or one or two others that they might get invited on over time. They just don't have enough to compare them to, and sites where the recoveries are being made, and to answer their own questions, you know. So I want to help answer that. You know, Charles Kenworthy and them did a great job um, on relieving what they called the Jesuit code, because what that's an altered form of code, because the Jesuits didn't want Spain to get all that stuff. They want to do their own trip. So you can't use what you'd call Spanish awareness. You can't use straight Spanish code. You have to use all the secret stuff. Like an eagle looking at something is never going to take you to where it is, because eagles are up there soaring all over the damn place. And it's where they came from that's important, not where they're always going. And so like a turtle dove, same thing. You see a stone turtle dove, uh, it's going to tell you follow its tail to your treasure, because the turtle dove always fakes an injury, runs across the ground, tries to get away from its nest. So it's always in leaving. So a lot of people don't know, you know, just, you know, how to read them and just that kind of deal. So I want to share that with people so I can see this stuff start coming to light. You know, it's about time the history gets shown. And if nobody can find anything, how the hell are we going to show the history?
So back to the Bigfoot. So obviously you're tracking them. You do lectures on them. You think this is real. Have you seen one?
Oh yeah, many. Yeah. I mean, many. I mean, here's some tracks of some kids. These are kind of cool. I don't know if we can light them up so you can see them. We'll see if we can cast a shadow or somehow. Maybe not. There's
Yeah,
like
a little bit.
yeah, those are a couple of the kids right there. Yeah, we stayed around us. We got pretty lucky and got around a family unit that really couldn't go anywhere, and stayed on them for from 2011 up till about 2017 solid, and hundreds of times around them.
So did they get used to you? Did being there? Did they try to scare you off? Did they, you know?
Yeah, kind of all above, and they all act different too. So the mother acts like the mother, like a mother would, and kids act like kids. I mean, if you can just describe it that way without taking 2 hours, dad's gone usually, and when dad comes around, even the kids act different. Yeah, like the boys will ball her up and be aggressive when they're never, or somewhat hostile when there never are. Usually it's kind of a play deal. They always have the upper hand, so you don't usually scare them. If you find out they're there, it's usually because they're doing stuff haphazardly because they don't care about you. And so that's, you know, hearing twig snaps or a grunt or anything like that's usually a pretty good compliment, because, you know, if they want to go silent, they go silent. Nobody's going to hear any of them. And there's like 7 of them that stay in that group, and you can get right in with them. I mean, I have got right in with them several times, and it's not as nerve wracking, I gotta say, as you'd think once you're used to them, because you can tell, you know, you can tell when something's being mean or something's being playful or whatever. And they usually get your goat. I mean, if you go crawling in somewhere, they'll try to double back on you and whistle behind you and stuff like that, and freak you out, make you nervous or whatnot. But when the big male was in there, yeah, I'm scared to death. He was didn't like people, but he was tolerant.
Uh,
I got to be 40 feet from him for about an hour and 45 minutes. And yeah, scariest thing I've ever experienced in my life, ever, of anything.
Really?
Doesn't matter. Oh yeah, you pull a gun in my face and nothing like that. And there's no human like that either. So yeah, real scary. And then, but I've been around them at night. You know, we got them on video crawling out and throwing a rock, hitting the rock at night at 65 feet, 67 feet. Um, and then that big one, like I got him for a minute on video during there, and it's those things are up on the YouTube channel. So, but you know, I did it for Oxford University and the Museum of Zoology, Lausanne, Switzerland. I did it for University of New Mexico, Gallup. We did a year-long field study for them, and these things were interrupted and controlled, and people got to hear lies in the media. You
Really?
know, oh yeah, yeah, the OLCHP, the Oxford project, Oxford Collateral Hominid Project with Lausanne, the Museum of Lausanne. They're the largest DNA laboratory for animal species in the world, and they have the most advanced equipment. Yeah, and they held their study for two. After our first sample went in, they asked us to get one off a living specimen, and because it came back unknown, but there was no recoverable DNA. But the hair itself, it was, you couldn't attribute it to any known animal. But and so we did. They held the study for 2 full months. So if anybody goes back through that, you'll see it was supposed to be out in like January, February, and it didn't come out for 2 months after that, because that's how long it took us to get a hair that still had a hydrated follicle, you know, within 15 or 30 minutes off a living subject. That took a couple months to get that. And that specimen, they never released the outcome on that one. So they claim they're still curating it in Lausanne, Switzerland, there at the Museum of Zoology. So, but they lied to the Associated Press about that. But
So at your talk that you're going to give at the Moonlight Gathering, are you going to show some pictures, that some of that video stuffs, or?
yeah, I sure can. I mean, what I was probably going to do, instead of doing like a normal PowerPoint, I know this is a little bit looser deal, and I'm not used to presenting either to scientific groups who are usually skeptic
Yeah,
peer groups, right?
yeah.
So that's not easy. And I've done it and managed to convince. So if I managed to either turn, I've never had someone stay a skeptic, a solid skeptic, even after one of those skeptical scientific, like, I mean, the guys from Los Alamos and Sandia Laboratories and University of New Mexico, biology and astrophysics, all these guys sitting in, and by the end of a 3 hour deal, none of them are totally against it anymore, whether they believe it or not. So I mean, you lay it out. If you lay it out, there it is. And I have a tendency to do that. So yeah, I'm going to bring up, I'll bring up some physical specimens and some other knickknacks and things like that. You know, I've got some other alien adjusted crap and some other stuff. You know, I've got, because of what we were doing and because who we got in with, you know, I have an archive that's pretty off the charts. You know, I'm looking, like right now, I'm looking over at Operation Majority, which is MJ12, Majestic 12, from all the writings from Milton William Cooper before he wrote his famous books. And, you know, these are the krill papers. These are all the ones about krill, which was the extraterrestrial biological entity that they kept around for a few years. And this is directly from him. It was sent, these are from the 80s, and they were sent directly to me from his attorney as he was writing them. They
Really?
selected 5 people at random to mail them to in case he got murdered. And I was one of those 5 in 1988. So I've got to be very privy on a lot of different levels, and then working, of course, with museum stuff. And Oxford requested us to go do that stuff in the field for them, and then University of New Mexico did as well. And during that studies, when I got hit by the rock, and you know, by a cantankerous juvenile, and it wasn't very nice to do, and it could have killed somebody, but it hadn't. We got lucky how it hit, but it's all on video.
So it was a big rock, huh?
Yeah, it's about 1.5 pounds probably, but the speed he chucked it sidearm. He was on all fours, low on all fours, and still reached out and chucked it sidearm, just like a wrist flick, and it probably hit it 55 miles an hour.
Wow.
And because the little Navajo buddy, my brother up there named Junebug, he was raising it. We were laying prone on the ground, totally flat, because it just seems like it's the safest. It's the least likely to get pushed or grabbed. And when you're in within 15 feet or 40 feet or something like that of them, it's you know, everything's a second and a half away at that point. So we're laying flat in there, and no one else would hardly go in there. And they were all around us and stuff. And one we kept crawling up in the sand road where we could see him by the full moon. And eventually, yeah, I mean, at one point, Junebug started reaching back for his knife, and you see me. I reach up and I pushed it back in his sheath. I tell him, "Don't pull it, dude." And yeah, and he comes out eventually, that young one, and just hucks a rock and nails us. And
Wow.
you see its eye come out from behind the post, and wham, we get nailed, and he just slides his eye back like this. It's so freaky, but yeah. And then I don't know, I react like a fool. I stood up and told him, "Man, I can throw this rock back at you if I want to." And there was a group of them. And then when we start backing up, you see blurry eye shine coming out from 3 spots into the road as we're coming. They 3 of them come out the road. Yeah. So it got so far beyond an if question pretty early. And so, now I've pretty well come full circle. So it's not, we can track them, we can find them, we can get to them, get on them, get responses from them, get them to look, stuff like that. So it's seldom that we go out without getting something, whether it's one to peek and give us some eye shine, or whistle, or start snapping trees, or whatever.
I didn't know all this about you, man. I'm glad you accepted to come and talk for us. And so with that said, man, it's coming up next weekend, July 28th and 29th. And I'll be happy to meet you. And I can't wait to meet you in person. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say. And with everybody else, man, I appreciate you that you've agreed to come out and talk to us. And this is going to be a blast.
Oh, Terry, I never would have turned you down, man. You're the one name. There's like 3 or 4 names, real slim. A couple of, well, actually, there's more, but a few of them are dead now.
Yeah.
But who have been right there forever. And I've never had a chance to really. You and I have never really had an in-depth conversation. We have played tag a few times and talked, and kind of stayed in tune with what was going on, kind of the backside a couple times, and even in the early Bigfoot stuff, like 2011, something like that. I remember you and I talked a little bit back then. There was some, or even later now, I think there was some squirrely stuff coming around. And but you're one guy I've always wanted to meet, Terry, and I have greatest respect, man. My absolute greatest respect. You're doing that one thing that everyone says that we should do. Man, we should get around all the old timers. We should get around all the guys who've been doing this for a while, and the new school guys, and and just start recording and just get what they know, because every time they pass, we lose.
Oh, history
Untold. Oh man, untold
there's
amount of
no
information.
way. Yeah, there's no way. I heard a lot of great stories, a lot of great, information, but it wasn't my story. There's no way I can relive it and tell it like they did. And when they passed away, I thought, that's a tragedy. Somebody needs to start recording these guys, and
yeah, I mean, there was one
that history.
Somebody might know this name. There was one guy, Neil Miller, that in Central Arizona. He was a mining engineer for some of the companies that were working the Bradshaws real heavy with some of the big, deeper stuff in the 80s that they were using in the oil and natural gas industry. That they still keep a lid on a lot of that stuff. I mean, they can look at unbelievable crap in the ground, and it's just a matter of paying high dollar to get and use imagery. And but Neil was one of those consultants, did that, and he also was doing an underground mining engineer, and so he had the job doing mine inspections and all that. And he told me about some stuff in the superstitions, and he knew. That's how I got to Coronado's winter home. And he wouldn't tell me what it was. I think he knew, but he just kept telling me you need to go there. And then when we try to get information on it, people would say, "Oh God, if you even try to go back in that country, you guys will die." Neil said, "No, you boys get in there and go look at this." So yeah, I guess he knew we could. And but yeah, some of the stuff up in the soups, man, superstitions, spiral stone staircase going in the ground, and government, part of a government bureau or whatever, went up there and it literally backfilled the top section of it, put a couple big boulders in it, backfilled it off, and he got to help work on that, find it, and stuff. But the stories these people had, now that's lost forever, and so but anyway, kudos to you, brother, because you're the guy that's logging all this now. You're the guy doing it now. You're doing what everyone said we should do, and
I'm
big appreciation for that.
I am trying, but man, I'm just glad I'm getting an interview with you, and I'm glad you're coming to talk to us. So you're going to be next weekend. I can't wait to meet you in person. And one more time, you got a YouTube channel, you got a Facebook page, man. Give me them one more time.
Yeah, we have a Kreider exploration. We have page and group on YouTube, and then there's KX Cryptid group or whatever. You have to look up KX Cryptid. You'll be able to find it through that probably, or by searching my name, Robert Kryders. That's Kryder. And then we are also on YouTube under KX Kryder Exploration. You can usually just like Google Kreider Exploration or my name, and it'll take you to some of these. And we're also online at KreiderExploration.com. And we have that website all set up, but I never have got a web guy. And man, I think I'm probably going to change hosts and things. So it's awful expensive to run and been really complex trying to do the way we're doing it. But I need to fill those up eventually too. But you can find most everything. You know, we do a lot on Facebook. You have to dig back through our posts, but we put a lot on there. So
With that said, Robert, man, I appreciate it, and you can't wait to see you this weekend. And that's a wrap.